Welcome to Stream of Conscience, brought to you by Democracy for America, Fairfield County, where we believe that change is possible and you can make it happen. I'm your host, John Hartwell. Our guest today is Tara Cook-Littman from the grassroots organization GMO Free Connecticut. Tara is a former prosecutor who lives in Fairfield. She's a certified holistic health counselor and director of GMO Free Connecticut, an organization dedicated to getting legislation passed in Connecticut that would mandate the labeling of products containing genetically modified organisms, commonly known as GMOs. Tara is active in her community, volunteering with a wide variety of charitable and nonprofit organizations, including working with the Fairfield PTA to improve the quality of food in public schools. Tara is also a wife and a mother of 3. Tara, welcome to Stream of Conscience.
Thank you, John.
So, in the last segment with Doug as a host, you and Amanda were talking about all the scientific things behind genetically modified organisms. This segment, we want to really talk about the politics. So, GMO Free Connecticut, the local organization, the people that are working on it, what's happening in Hartford, what's happening nationally.
Sure.
Give people an idea of what's going on and how they can get involved.
Sure. Well, in Connecticut, GMO Free Connecticut really grew organically in that it was just moms, farmers, consumers, grandparents who came together because they care about having the choice to feed their families GMOs or not. And that's really how it came about, just people connecting with the same purpose.
So how did you get involved?
Well, last year when the bill was first raised, I actually went up to Hartford to testify, and I met some other people like myself that day. And that was really how it started. We all just started connecting with each other and began a campaign.
So the bill was already introduced in Hartford.
Correct.
And you actually, in your group, didn't have anything to do with generating that bill. Who put that bill in?
That bill was put in by Representative Dick Roy. He's now retired and working with us. And that was a couple of years in the making where he was drafting the bill, working on the bill. He actually did pull in some local folks to help him draft the bill. And then actually once the bill was introduced and it went through hearings, that's when I got involved. And we were able to help him make amendments to the bill to reflect things that national folks had already learned.
How did you find out that the bill was being introduced, that there were hearings, that they needed some help?
Sure. I actually learned about it from my representative, Tony Wong. He had heard about me and the fact that I was giving GMO talks around Connecticut and asked me to go up and testify. And I knew in my heart that I had no choice but to go up and testify. So
you had actually been involved with GMO advocacy.
Yes.
But there was not at that point a GMO Free Connecticut organization.
Correct.
You were doing this on your own?
On my own, yes.
And what led you to do that?
Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, I first learned about GMOs. And it's actually kind of fascinating when you think about the fact that GMOs have been on the market since 1996, and I first learned about it 5 or 6 years ago, had never heard the term. Once I learned about them, learned that they were in most of the food we were eating, I started to do my own research. I discovered Jeffrey Smith and the Institute for Responsible Technology. And because I had gotten my certification as a health counselor, incorporated GMOs into my talks. So that whenever I was giving nutrition talks that I always called Real Food for Real Life, I talked about how, in my opinion, GMOs were not real food.
So you got your certification as a holistic health counselor first.
Correct.
Then you learned about GMO foods.
I actually learned about GMOs before.
Okay. And so did that actually have anything to do with your becoming a counselor?
Yes. Well, going back 5 or 6 years, I actually was sick. I had a lot of symptoms. Doctors couldn't help me. They wanted to put me on all different sorts of medications, but something deep inside me told me no, there was a better way. So I started doing my own research. That was when I came across GMOs and learned really it's much more about GMOs. It's our entire food system. And just started changing the way I ate, the way my family ate, and I got better over time. And that was when I just started telling the world about what I knew and wanted to have some kind of a backing so that people would actually listen to me, that I wasn't just a crazy mother telling them to change they were eating. That was when I got my certification as a health counselor.
So the arc of your life around this is that you were sick.
Yes.
You did your own research. you helped get yourself better. You decided then to help other people.
Correct.
And as part of that, you've moved into political advocacy around GMOs and the labeling of foods in Connecticut.
Exactly.
Terrific. Okay, when you were up in Hartford, and the last time the bill was up there, and you began to meet other people who were also interested in this, how did you then move that to the next level and create an organization?
Well, it was over time, and we're still not a nonprofit or a 501c4, which is meant for lobbying. We're still very grassroots. But over time, as I would meet people, like I met Amanda, and I would see wonderful things in them, I would bring them on board. And I would say, do you want to get involved? What do you want to contribute? And will you be on our leadership? It's actually been very exciting because most recently, to start, we were just building our core, our leadership. Now we're starting to build our volunteer base and actually getting more people involved and being able to reach more people. And last year, there were only a couple of us able to go out, do GMO talks, do interviews. Now, there are so many of us. It's not just me anymore, and that feels great because I always felt that the best thing I could do was empower others to speak about GMOs.
How many people do you have in your leadership?
We have 20 people on our leadership council right now.
And are they mostly from Fairfield County or from around the state?
From across the state. Actually, from every county except Tolland. We're still working on Tolland County.
Okay. And what do they have different sort of responsibilities in your committee?
Yes. Well, Amanda is in charge of social media.
So that's Amanda Wendt.
Yes, that's Amanda. And then we have other folks who are in charge of the education piece. A big part of what we're doing at the grassroots level is going around and doing movie screenings and doing GMO educational talks. So some folks are very involved in that aspect of it because the hope is that as you educate, other people will be inspired to reach out to their legislators. And that's a big tactic that we're using. And then other folks are involved with myself in the legislative end, going up to Hartford, speaking to our politicians and our representatives. And that's another aspect that people are involved in. So that's really the big pieces of it.
And on the educational side, you're doing movie screenings, you're doing panels, you're doing speakers. So talk about how you decide to go into a particular community with a program, how you choose a program, how you communicate to the community that the program is on. So
sure.
What's a grassroots person doing as they bring this issue to the fore?
Well, sometimes we're approached and asked by a library or an organization, will you come and do a movie screening or a GMO talk? So sometimes that happens, and other times we just cold call. We call libraries, we call organizations, we reach out to all our contacts. Everyone thinks about who their contacts are, who might want to hold a screening or a talk. We reach out to them, we make a flyer, we put the flyer out on social media, on our website. We always invite the representatives from that area to join us because oftentimes they haven't been educated themselves either. So they'll attend the event and then we always ask them to speak at the end. And most often they get up at the end and say, wow, thank you, I knew nothing about this. I will support GMO labeling.
And where have you done these events?
All across the state. We've done them across Fairfield County, across Hartford County, across New Haven County. In fact, this Saturday we have a panel taking place at Yale that we're participating in. Again, the only place we really don't have much action taking place right now is in Tolland.
And when you decide to set up an evening, where do you go? What kind of venues do you use?
Oftentimes libraries. We also do a lot of talks at religious institutions. We find that churches and synagogues are very interested in having us come and speak. And in fact, the UCC Church of Connecticut passed a resolution in favor of GMO labeling this past summer, and we're hoping that other religious organizations will follow. So
you can use then a UCC church in a community. You should just call them up and say, we'd like to come and do something, and they already know about the issue and are supportive.
Yes.
So what is it that you're trying to get through Hartford in this session?
So we would like to get a GMO labeling bill passed that would mandate the labeling of all processed foods that contain GMOs. This would not apply to animal feed at this time. And so it includes any animals that have been genetically engineered themselves. Genetically engineered salmon is about to be approved by the FDA. We're hoping not. and there's a big comment period right now to the FDA to prevent it, which was just extended by 60 days because they have already received an overwhelming amount of comments. So it would include all processed foods, it would include all genetically engineered animals, and it would include all dairy containing RBGH and RBST, which are genetically engineered hormones.
And we talked about this, or you talked about this in the last segment, but what are basically the foods that are already GMO modified?
It's corn, soy, canola, sugar beets, and canola, I believe. There are 5.
Right.
I always miss one, like Amanda.
Papaya.
And, well, Hawaiian papaya,
Right.
yes, and small amounts of crookneck zucchini and squash, and then actually alfalfa. Alfalfa is the biggest problem because that's what they used to feed to the organic fed animals. And now the alfalfa is being genetically engineered. It actually threatens the ability for organic farmers to raise organic animals.
So canola and soy products are everywhere. Beets are used to basically produce
Sugar.
virtually all the sugar in this country.
Unless it's cane sugar.
Yeah, but
it's,
that's very
right,
small
exactly.
part of the sugar production, especially in this country. So you're talking about ingredients which are throughout the food chain.
Yes.
And virtually every processed food that we can see on the shelves, which makes up virtually all of that we see in a supermarket.
Correct.
So we're looking at asking that those foods, if they contain those genetically modified organisms, be labeled as such.
Yes.
But we're only here in Connecticut. We have 3 million people in Connecticut, in a country with 300+ million people. So we're 1% of the population. Why would a food company then even want to sell food in Connecticut if they didn't have to sell the genetically modified labeled foods in anywhere else in the country?
Sure. So first of all, you have to look at what's happening across the national scene. There are currently 37 states that have joined a coalition of states for GMO labeling that have launched a Right to Know GMO campaign this year. And so Connecticut is not the only state that's doing this. There are 37 other states working on this. A lot of states in the Northeast region, in fact, have a very good chance of passing a GMO labeling law right along with us. Vermont and Maine, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts are all also introducing bills this year. So we're really not alone. And also, there will be a couple of years before the bill takes effect. And if you look at the trend happening across this country, by the time our bill takes effect, it's pretty much a certainty that there will be a plethora of states passing GMO labeling. This is the direction that our country is going in. And ultimately, if enough states do pass a law, the hope is that then the federal government will have no choice but to pass a law.
Now, there was a referendum in California, I believe.
Yes.
And GMO labeling was the object of the referendum, and it failed. Can you talk about that?
Sure, that was Prop 37, and we're actually very grateful to Prop 37 because it really increased the awareness of GMOs and the need for labeling. So we actually don't even really look at it as a loss because over 6 million people voted in favor of Prop 37. That was almost 50% of the vote. Mm-hmm. So we lost by, I think, 300,000 votes. That's minuscule. And when you look at the amount of money spent by the opposition to Prop 37, almost $50 million versus the $5 million that we had to spend for those of us in favor of Prop 37, I think it is very difficult to call that a loss because we did get so very close.
So who ponied up the $50 million?
So you're looking at the biotech industry, chemical companies, and the junk food industry.
Okay. You want to name any names?
Sure. Monsanto, Dow, Bayer, Pepsi, Kraft. I could continue, Nestle.
I don't think of Dow Chemical as a food producer.
It's a little bit frightening when you think about these chemical companies that really are responsible for giving us the seeds of life right now, our food that we eat. But yes, that's exactly what the chemical industry has done. Monsanto and Dow and Bayer and Syngenta have all decided that it was great for them to go into the food industry, and that's what they've done.
And so they put up $50 million to fight the
Correct.
The bill in California, and there was $5 million on the side of GMO labeling. Who were there any major groups behind that?
Really, the money that was raised in favor of Prop 37 came from some organic companies, from some nonprofits that work for GMO labeling, and individuals like myself.
So here in Connecticut, who's lining up on which side of this bill?
So right now, the folks that are for GMO labeling are normal citizens like myself, consumers. There are actually studies and surveys that have been done across the country that overwhelmingly show 90% of American citizens want GMO labeling. So it's pretty safe to say that the majority of consumers in Connecticut want GMO labeling. You also have the organic farmers in favor of GMO labeling. Now we also have restaurant owners and chefs coming on our side, because what they're saying is they want to be able to make the decision for themselves about what to feed their customers. And they're very frustrated because their customers are coming in now and asking, is your food GMO free? And they can't give an answer because the packages that they've bought of food are not labeled. So we actually have the chef Chris Eddy from Winvian, which is a fantastic gourmet restaurant up in Litchfield County, and he's heading up getting the chefs to come on board, and we're calling that Chefs for GMO Free CT.
And on the other side?
On the other side, you have the Farm Bureau of Connecticut.
The Farm Bureau.
The Farm Bureau is in opposition. You have the retail stores are in opposition to GMO labeling. And also, of course, the chemical companies, the corn growers, the soy growers. Even though in Connecticut, we don't believe that there are many GMO crops being grown. And if they're being grown at all, they're being grown to feed livestock, not humans.
But you're equally opposed to having GMO foods fed to livestock.
Absolutely. If I feed my family animal protein, it's from organic animals.
Okay. And you mentioned the Food Association is against this. Why would they be in opposition?
So the Connecticut Food Association represents the majority of the retail outlets in Connecticut, and it's very difficult for me to understand why they would oppose it. Because if their customers are saying that they want GMO labeling, I would think that's the side that they would be on. But instead, we hear a lot of opposition from them, and what we consistently hear from them is that they think it's going to increase their costs, which they will have to pass on to consumers. But I find that very difficult to understand for the simple reason that manufacturers change over their labels pretty consistently, and these companies will have 2 years to either reformulate their products, which they can do as they've done for Europe and other countries that have GMO labeling, or they will be able to just put genetically engineered on their label the next time they change over their product. So I can't really understand where the cost is coming in. The only thing I can imagine is that they're basing that on the fact that they think they'll want to reformulate their products and get the GMOs out. And it's a very complicated issue, but as of now, if you take GMO foods versus non-GMO foods, it is true that GMO foods cost more, non-GMO foods cost more when you just look at non-GMO corn versus GMO corn. But when you take the cost and lay it out across the broad spectrum, GMO foods actually have a much greater cost to society across the board, and to farmers, I might say, because if you look at non-GMO seeds, organic seeds that are not sprayed with any chemicals that farmers can use year after year after year, there's a lot, it's a lot cheaper than the GMO seeds that you have to buy the chemicals every year and you have to buy the seeds every year.
But your push at the moment is not to ban GMO
Not
foods.
at all.
And if a farmer decided that they wanted to produce GMO foods, you'd say that's fine as long as you label it.
Absolutely.
So that the consumer can actually make a choice.
Exactly. No, I'm not looking to ban them at all. We just believe we all have a right to know what's in our food so that we can make the choice for ourselves. And if the market demands more non-GMO foods, then let the market demand that, but give the market the chance to dictate what it wants. I don't think that it's fair that these companies are trying to keep the information from us and basically saying, you don't need this information, it's going to be confusing to you, we know what's best for you, you don't need to know.
Right.
I think we need to know. We have a right to know.
We're taping this show in February, toward the end of the month, and the legislative session generally goes to the beginning of June.
Correct.
There is a bill up there now. It's going to make its way through several committees. There's public testimony that's happening, and then there'll be lots of lobbying done on both sides in order to convince legislators to go one way or the other. So can you talk about which committees you think the bill is going to go through?
Sure.
And what you would like to see people do if they want to get involved?
Absolutely. So there's actually going to be 2 labeling bills in Connecticut this year, one that's coming out of public health and one that's coming out of the Children's Committee. The bill coming out of Children's Committee only applies to baby formula and baby food. And while we're very supportive of that bill, the bill that we're really concentrating on is the bill that will be coming out of public health that would mandate GMO labeling for all foods, not just baby foods. So it looks like the bill will come out of public health, and that's where the first committee hearing will be. It looks like it will also have to go through environment and general law, because the bill actually amends a Connecticut statute rather than creating a whole new law. So if people want to get involved, first of all, the best thing they can do is watch for when the bill will come out in public health and get up to Hartford and testify.
And how do you do that? How do you watch for some? Because most people in this state have absolutely no idea on a day-to-day basis what's happening in the Capitol, especially around a piece of legislation and where it is in the process and who's supporting it and who's whatever. So what should someone do to get involved?
The best way for people to stay involved and informed right now is to go to our website, GMOFreeCT.org, and sign up for our newsletters. Because we will be keeping everybody informed as to when the hearings are, when we have action alerts, because there will certainly be action alerts, when to be calling your legislator, when we may need to be reaching out to the governor and other people in our government.
And there are lots of different ways to communicate with your legislator. And one way, of course, is to send them an email. And another is to send them a piece of snail mail. And a third way would be to actually make a phone call. And a fourth way would be to go and find them and grab them by the buttonholes and say, listen. So which of those do you think is the most effective?
Well, I think probably in the reverse order that you just stated. First, face-to-face. If you can get a meeting with your representative, and really they should give you a meeting. They work for you, you elected them, they represent you. So I would first recommend try to make a meeting face-to-face, and they can certainly reach out to anyone in GMO Free CT if they would like someone with a little bit more knowledge to go with them. That's something that we would love to do. We would love to accompany constituents to meetings with their representatives. So that's the best way. The second thing they can do is make a phone call. Phone calls definitely have a bigger impact than emails. So call your representative, tell them you care about GMO labeling. They don't want to have a huge conversation on the phone anyway. Just get that message across that you want them to support GMO labeling. They will hear you. And then you can certainly send emails. And we will have a point-and-click email campaign where you can click on a link and it will generate the letter for you. But we really would like people to write their own personal notes as well.
And along that line, you've asked people to be ready to come up to Hartford and testify.
Yes.
But it's also possible to testify simply by sending in your testimony to the committee.
Absolutely. Yes, you can just file written testimony and not actually have to go up there and speak.
And that becomes part of the record.
It does.
And then that can be used to help influence your senator or your state rep.
Absolutely. And you don't even need to be a Connecticut resident to submit testimony. So if you know of anybody with a certain expertise throughout the country, we can be asking them to send written testimony as well.
And finally, if someone wants to help you in their community, they don't feel that they're really knowledgeable, but they know the people who run the library, or they know someone at their church that they could organize a group, or maybe they belong to the League of Women Voters, or maybe they have a group of moms from their daycare center or something like that. What should they do if they want to spread the message, or even just to learn more?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. And that's really what Grassroots is about. It's about individuals thinking about who their contacts are and who they can bring to the table. So what would be great is if they reach out to us. Again, they can reach us through our webpage or tara@gmofreect.org. And we are more than happy to send people into communities to do GMO talks, to do movie screenings, and just reach out to anybody that wants to learn more about GMOs. Even above and beyond getting a GMO labeling bill passed, our primary goal is simply to educate all Connecticut residents about GMOs.
Well, as I said at the top of the program, change is possible and you can make it happen. And Tara, you and your organization are clearly in the forefront of this issue. And you know, I think it's terrific to see grassroots people who get an idea, they get a cause, and they go for it. And I think you're going to be successful. And I really appreciate your coming on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have a number of reasons why we feel it's in our best interests to have genetically modified organisms labeled. First, our right to know. We deserve to know what we are feeding ourselves and our families. 61 other countries have labeling laws, but not the United States of America. Yeah. Here we are today on sacred ground in front of our armory, where for the past several generations, this is the place where our young people have left Connecticut to go off and fight to uphold our Constitution and our rights, including our right to know. GMOs have not reduced our uses of pesticides, they have not increased our yields, they have not lowered costs, nor have they mitigated loss to drought or frost or heat. They're only for the benefits of the private corporations which own the rights for them, and because they are privately owned, they cannot be studied adequately.
We have a right to know what we are eating. We have a right to know what we're feeding our children and grandchildren. There's two of them right here. Russia, not the most open society in the world, has banned GMOs. You've heard about 61 nations having laws, not the U.S. What happened? The industries are using our freedom for their benefit to take away our freedom. That is not right.
The problem we face today is perhaps the most significant public health issue we have of our generation. And the big problem is that most people don't know about it. It's a stealth issue. If we're going to be successful as a legislature, we need to expand the circle beyond these wonderful, passionate people here and make every citizen of the state of Connecticut not only aware, but care about what's in their foods. Representative Miller didn't want to bash anybody today, but I'll do a little bashing. If we're going to be successful, we are up against some very well-entrenched interests that have much to lose if this goes forward. Do not underestimate the magnitude of the challenge yet before us. Other states have tried and failed. If we're going to be successful in Connecticut, and Connecticut is prepared to be first in something this important, we will need to have everybody's help. And on that note, I want to thank you all for being here today.
This GMO stuff smells bad. The fact that they're not willing to go ahead and anytime you see, whether it's Linda McMahon or Monsanto, spending a lot of money fighting against a good cause, you know there's a real problem. So I really appreciate the efforts of everybody here, certainly people, the leadership that you have. I think you're doing a great job, and hopefully I'll be part of getting this done here over across the street. So thank you very much.
That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. You can catch all our shows on YouTube by going to youtube.com/user/DFATVnet. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, and you can send comments or suggestions for a show to info@dfa-tv.net. If you'd like to learn more about progressive political action, we meet on the first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. at the Silver Star Diner in Norwalk. We'd love to have you join us. Remember, change is possible, and you can make it happen. This has been Stream of Conscience. I'm your host, John Hartwell. Thanks for watching.